people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. This upcoming Saturday on the undercard of Serrano versus Cruz, a battle of the unbeatens. Unbeaten Ramla Ali is going to be taking on unbeaten Avril Mathie.
UK versus Australia.
A battle of the unbeatens and an even contest, at least on paper. The actual fight is what's going to separate them. Ramla Ali sports professional record of 7 wins, no losses, and no draws.
2 knockouts, 2 years younger than Avril Mathie.
Avril, who sports professional record of 8 wins and no losses with 1 draw.
3 knockouts.
35 years old to Ramla Ali, who's 33. Avril's about 2 years older than Ramla.
She's got 1 or 2 more fights than Ramla.
To the eye, Ramla Ali is the fighter with the higher ceiling of the two. This contest is a super bantamweight contest. Super bantamweight, that's 122 pounds. That's where Mayerling Rivas reigns as that division's WBA champion.
Mexico's own Jamie Mercado's got the WBC.
Argentinia's own Deborah Dionysius, she's got the WBO. And Shernika Johnson, she's got the IBF.
Shanika's supposed to be fighting Ellie Scottney later on this year.
And the winner of this fight, whoever it is, takes a step in that direction as this super bantamweight contest is being billed for a lesser version of the IBF title, the Intercontinental title.
They're both evenly matched, Ramla Ali and Avril Mathie.
The tale of the tape, they're evenly matched. Similar age range, give or take a year or two.
They're both orthodox fighters.
Avril Mathie, she saw action 2 times in 2021, only once in 2022. She only had 1 fight last year. That was back in June, opposite the ring Judith Hatchbowl.
So she has seen action in the last 12 months, even if she wasn't particularly active in the last 12 months, because she only fought once.
Ramla Ali, in comparison, was a lot more active in 2021, in 2022. In 2021, Ramla Ali fought 3 times. She fought 3 times again in 2022, 3 times last year. Her last fight was opposite the ring Crystal Garcia Nova in August on the undercard of Joshua versus Usyk 2.
Scored a first-round knockout.
Because Ramla Ali's been a lot more active than Avril the last 2 years, that lends itself to the fighter's sharpness and their killer instincts. The more you do something, the better you get at it. So if you've been more active than your opponent the last 2 years,
may end up being a lot sharper than your opponent. And I do feel that overall sharpness is going to be a determining factor in this fight.
Avril Mathie is a good, serviceable fighter.
Very textbook.
Exhibits some ability long range, though mid-range, she's vulnerable. She can be caught.
Good physical dimensions for the weight.
Toughness, Avril Mathie is a good, serviceable, textbook boxer, even if nothing about her really jumps out at the screen at you.
Though, as stated, mid-range to inside, there is a vulnerability to Avril Mathie.
Can become a bit flustered mid-range to inside in the pocket should the other girl slip past the jab and get close to her.
Avril's best punches really are her straight punches.
So long as she has room to throw them. She can get off a body shot or 2 mid-range to inside, but because she's not that big a puncher, it's not an authoritative body shot.
I'd give the edge in power and sharpness, speed to Ramla Ali.
So what's this fight going to look like?
Well, as stated, Avril Mathie's a very textbook conventional boxer. Everything she does is off the jab, but there doesn't appear to be much snap on her punches, much snap on her jab. So I see a situation where Ramla Ali may be the aggressor, Avril may be the defender attempting to manage the distance.
Keep distance between herself and Ramla. I think it's Ramla who's going to be coming forward, looking to mix it up. Mid-range to inside, I think Ramla's the more fluid puncher, puts punches together faster, sharper, better than Avril Mathie does.
Ramla's got the stronger corner, too. She trains under Manny Robles.
I expect to see a bit of catch and shoot from Ramla Ali as she marches forward, looking to close the distance on Avril Mathie.
Avril's going to be pumping out that jab, looking to keep Ramla Ali out. Ramla's going to catch it on the arms.
And gloves and shoot the counter.
Because Ramla's a bit faster than Avril Mathie to the eye.
Punches are a bit snappier. I anticipate that things could get very scrappy, very messy, mid-range to inside between Ramla Ali and Avril Mathie. Avril, who's more prone to clinching mid-range to inside than
Wrestling than having a phone booth fight.
Ramla Ali's speed and aggression is what will create separation between them. She closes the distance and curves the right hand, looking to bang her way in. Crowd Avril Mathie.
She's developed a mean streak over time.
Taking the initiative, and I think that mean streak is what's going to create separation between them. On paper, they're evenly matched.
To the eye, Ramla Ali's a little bit more spiteful than Avril Mathie is.
And even though neither fighter is all that big a puncher, I'd wager there's a little bit more on Ramla Ali's shots because they're snappier, because they come in faster. I'd wager there's a little bit more on Ramla's punches than there is on Avril's.
Though neither fighter being all that big a puncher, I'd say this fight goes to the cards. This fight ends in a decision.
Points decision win for Ramla Ali. That's who I'm going with this weekend.
Ramla on points is the pick.
In men's heavyweight news, Olympic gold medalist turned professional boxer Tony Yoka is set to return to action later on this year on the 11th of March opposite the ring. Carlos Takam, seasoned veteran Carlos Takam, who's coming off of 2 consecutive losses to Joe Joyce and Arslanbek Makhmudov.
So he decided not to run it back with Martin Bakole.
Given the one-sided nature of their meeting last year in May, I believe it was, I'm not at all surprised to see that the Tony Yoka people, they don't want to run it back. They don't want a rematch. They're going in a different direction. You would have thought
That was a career best win for Martin Bakole, and you would have thought that things would have picked up since then, but they haven't.
picked up for Martin Bakole. No, based on this, it seems that Tony Yoka is set to return to action before Martin does, even though Tony's the one that took the beating. Tony's the one that took the shellacking. That was Tony's only fight in all of last year.
First professional loss.
It was lopsided. Whenever Tony Yoka tried to get something going with Martin Bakole, he'd just smack him up real hard.
Shut him down.
Stop his momentum. So Tony, here and now, he's on the rebound, sporting a professional record of 11 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 9 knockouts, an Olympic gold medalist.
You wonder if that initial loss affected his relationship with Top Rank, them being his promoters in this part of the world, because if it did, then that means that Tony's next fight, it may not be shown on ESPN Plus the way his previous fights have been shown on ESPN Plus.
In this part of the world, has that initial loss to Martin Bakole affected Tony Yoka's relationship with Top Rank? You have to wonder about that. You also have to wonder about Tony's corner situation.
Is he still with Virgil Hunter?
Is that still going on? Or, on the heels of his first professional loss, did he decide to give his corner a complete overhaul? Was he not getting what he needed from that relationship, that partnership with Virgil Hunter? You know, Virgil rose to fame for his work with Andre Ward.
Tony Yoka's no Andre Ward.
There is a fragility to Tony Yoka that we saw in that Martin Bakole fight, and he's got to figure things out.
Questions that need answers. Is he still with Top Rank? Is he still with Virgil?
And can he handle a 42-year-old Samad Carlos Takam, who's been in there with the best? And
He is a notoriously hard fighter, notoriously difficult fighter to look good against. I mean, anyone from Anthony Joshua to Joe Joyce have shared the ring with Carlos Takam, and
he's pesky, he's crafty, he's durable, experienced, sporting a professional record of 39 wins with 7 losses, 1 draw, 28 knockouts.
having been stopped 4 times in 47 professional contests, 47 professional bouts.
Last in action in Canada last year opposite the ring, unbeaten Arslanbek Makhmudov. And Arslanbek Makhmudov, you know, while he did hurt Carlos Takam in that fight, Carlos weathered the storm and heard the final bell.
He finished the fight on his feet.
He is getting up there in age. He's in his early 40s. He only fought once in 2021 opposite the ring, Joe Joyce in July. Only fought once in 2022 opposite the ring, Arslanbek Makhmudov. The situation on paper seems manageable enough for Tony Yoka, the novice in all of this.
Novice compared to Carlos Takam. Carlos Takam has been around for years. Shared the ring with some of the very best fighters in today's heavyweight division and yesterday's.
Now he's set to share the ring with Tony Yoka, who's on the bounce, on the rebound, still trying to establish himself as a force in today's heavyweight division.
Listen, this is about as manageable a situation as you could hope to put Tony Yoka in under these circumstances. If you can't deal with a 42-year-old Carlos Takam, who's only fought 2 times in the last 2 years and he's coming off of 2 losses.
I mean, if he can't manage that, then I don't know what to tell you. This is about as manageable a situation as you could hope to put him in.
He's got 1 loss, just 1 loss. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't have to be.
But there is some pressure tacked onto this fight for Tony Yoka to not just win, but win in good fashion, to go out there and look good, because this is a manageable situation, at least it should be, on paper.
If you can't manage this, then I don't know, man.
This fight is all the way out there in March, over a month from now, and we'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches. And finally, a follow-up to a story we talked about this past weekend. Oscar De La Hoya aims to sign Terence Crawford, stating, "Let us present you with a schedule of fights leading up to Errol Spence."
And I do think that Goldenboy can present Terence Crawford with a schedule of fights, though as far as the Errol Spence Jr. fight, I feel like that ship has sailed.
Oscar De La Hoya continues to find creative ways to draw attention to himself and his promotional empire. The latest trick by the Hall of Fame former 6th Division champion and chairman of Goldenboy Promotions was the suggestion of bringing WBO welterweight champion Terence "Bud" Crawford to the Los Angeles headquartered company. The pre-fight build-up to Goldenboy's first DAZN show of 2023 included a now viral social media post image of De La Hoya, Crawford, and Hall of Fame former 2 Division champion Bernard Hopkins. Caption, "Big things are brewing, hashtag stay tuned." Little clarification was offered as to what actually took place during a meeting.
You can imagine what they talked about. A potential Alexis Rocha fight, maybe a Blair Cobbs fight, and a showdown with Virgil.
The image itself has given rise to criticism in some circles, small ones, Spence fans mostly, that Terence Crawford is ducking Errol Spence by jumping into bed with Goldenboy.
Guys are grasping at straws.
Future plans for Terence Crawford, Oscar De La Hoya told DAZN's Chris Mannix prior to Saturday's main event at YouTube Theater in Inglewood, California, he wants to fight the big fights against Errol Spence. I told him, we can make that fight happen. Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis is going to open a lot of doors for us that will lead to us doing business with the PBC. I told Crawford, let us present to you a schedule of fights leading up to Spence. I have all the confidence in the world that Crawford versus Spence will happen.
I'm not as confident.
Al Heyman didn't want to work with Bob Arum on this thing, even though Bob Arum would have helped him bear the brunt of the promotion and financing a guarantee for his fighter at least.
His then fighter, Terence Crawford.
But you heard what Errol Spence Jr. was going on about at that time, that Terence was on the wrong side of the street, that he needed to come over to Showtime and or Fox.
They didn't want to work with Top Rank on doing a deal, so you think they're going to want to work with Goldenboy.
Oscar De La Hoya highlights the business they're already doing with the PBC in reference to the Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight, but that's not dissimilar from what we already saw take place between Top Rank and the PBC. Top Rank and the PBC worked together on Wilder versus Fury 2 and 3.
The same way that Goldenboy and the PBC are working together on Garcia versus Davis.
That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get anywhere when it comes to Crawford versus Spence.
Between Top Rank and the PBC, they made 2 Wilder versus Fury fights together.
They couldn't get Crawford versus Spence over the line. That being said, I'm not optimistic that Oscar De La Hoya and Goldenboy will succeed where Top Rank failed.
I'm not.
In the more immediate future, Errol Spence Jr. is set to return to action in late May opposite the ring Keith Thurman in what is a non-title fight at 154 pounds.
Still haven't gotten a formal explanation from the powers that be as to why Errol's next fight is going to be at junior middleweight instead of welterweight when the fight was ordered as a welterweight contest. A mandated title defense for what is a welterweight title.
We really haven't gotten a formal explanation from anybody as to why Errol's next fight is being billed as a junior middleweight contest. Most, like myself, are interpreting that as Errol Spence Jr.
I think he's leaving the welterweight division. I don't think he can make that weight healthy anymore, and he wants to move up. That's what I think this is. I've said it a million times, I'll say it a million more. I don't think he's coming back.
Though irrespective of a forecast, at minimum what you know is that Errol Spence Jr.'s next fight is several months from now, approximately 4.
5 if you count January, this past month.
Errol Spence Jr.'s fans have already begun to take issue with Terence potentially doing any kind of business with Goldenboy, saying that he's signing to Goldenboy in order to avoid Errol.
And what do you call Errol moving up to junior middleweight? What's that?
The better question is, if Errol Spence Jr.'s next fight is set to go down several months from now, in May, what would you have Terence Crawford do? Sit on his hands and wait? Hope that Errol Spence Jr. will spin the block and they resume negotiations? What would you have Terence Crawford do?
What the fuck's he supposed to do?
They criticized him for doing any kind of business with Black Prime, who were able to give him a sizable guarantee where Al Heyman was not, for what's supposed to be a bigger fight than that fight was, the Avenesian fight. They criticized him for doing business with Black Prime. They're criticizing him now for potentially doing business with Goldenboy. It seems to me that they don't want Terence Crawford doing anything. They won't be happy until he's sitting on the shelf collecting dust.
They don't want him doing any kind of business with anybody else. They don't want him fighting anyone. They don't want him doing anything.
Even though there's an actual reason he was over there talking to Oscar De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins, their fighter, their welterweight, Alexis Rocha. There's a palpable possibility that he becomes Terence's next mandatory challenger this year by way of the WBO. We talked about that. How Virgil's number 1, but Virgil's spoken for. Keith Thurman's number 2, but he's spoken for. And the next man in line is Alexis Rocha. So at minimum, there was that to be addressed.
They have to deal with that, and that's a fight that Alexis Rocha wants. That's a fight that he's after. Post-fight this past weekend, in so many words, he says he wants the Crawford fight.
So if Errol ain't set to return to action until May, what's wrong with Terence Crawford keeping busy with Alexis Rocha? What's he supposed to do?
He's supposed to sit out the entirety of this year while he's in his mid-30s, collecting dust and ring rust, waiting for Errol to pick up the phone.
Waiting for Al Heyman, who couldn't even guarantee him any money for what's supposed to be a huge welterweight contest, a huge welterweight fight, 5 years in the making.
The guy doesn't guarantee him any money.
It seems to me they're trying desperately to criticize Terence for everything that he does when the onus to do the deal and get the fight done is on both Al Heyman and Errol Spence Jr. If Errol Spence Jr. is the A-side fighter,
Terence is a network and promotional free agent.
you didn't have a competing platform or a competing promoter to have to deal with, to work with in order to do that fight. It was all on you. It was all on Al.
And he didn't do it.
He didn't get it done. And in Terence Crawford's own words, that fight wasn't even going to go down last year. It was going to go down this year. And for some reason, Al Heyman took issue with Terence taking a keep busy fight last year.
No. Errol's fighting Keith, and that's not set to go down for some months in May.
Errol's army of mouth breathers take issue with Terence potentially doing business with Goldenboy.
So what, you don't want this guy to fight nobody?
It's not like Errol is available. Errol's fighting Keith, remember?
You stupid or something?
And if the fight between them don't happen, you're going to blame it on Terence doing business with Goldenboy. You're not even going to mention that Errol's moving up to junior middle, are you?
You're not going to mention that.
Oscar De La Hoya, he's optimistic that he can make that fight happen, but myself,
I'm not optimistic because Al Heyman doesn't want to do that fight.